Welcome back, everyone. It's Angela here.
And this is Amber. Today one of the questions we are going to talk about is limitations. I know there are so many different limitations and this is a very big subject, but I thought it would be good for us to cover some basic limitations. What is something that limits us when we are trying to transform and understand who our soul self is?
Great question. And yes, there's a gob of limitations that we have, right? And they all pertain to the belief systems. So, the biggest one that I experience or that I hear people talk about is their limiting belief that they're not good enough or that they don't have enough. It's always about enough, right? Like we're constant seekers of all the abundances, yet we don't believe in the abundances. That's the trick right there.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through a phase where they don't feel like they're enough.
Well, we're very
So,
well programmed, right, to believe that we aren't enough. And, as a woman, I particularly have had that experience my whole entire life because I was raised in a family who believed in hierarchy. The man of the house was the breadwinner, the controller. He made all the decisions. Um, and women were second best. And so that belief system or that experience alone taught me, that I would never ever measure up. But that's such a lie.
so how would a person get out having that in your everyday life growing up? How would a person work to through that limitation to know that they deserve more than that and that they are enough no matter who they are or what they look like?
Well, the continuing circumstances in your life or the continuing experiences that you have in your life either support your belief that you're not enough or it creates a resistance or a an internal conflict that you pay attention to sooner or later, right? Because if you have the belief and you believe that you want that kind of a experience in life, then every single experience in your life will support that for you. If you have that internal conflict and that resistance to the hierarchy, or in my case, it was the hierarchy, that I had to sit back and say, okay, what is it that I really want? Right. So when I was searching for a partner in life, I looked for someone who would treat me equally because I didn't believe in it and I didn't want the hierarchy. So you have to literally take a step back and say, okay, what is it that I really want in my life? How do I want to be, treated as a human being? How do I want to, what kind of a relationship do I want to have? And then you kind of make decisions based on what it is that you want. But the first step is to become aware. Become aware that um, if you're feeling like you can never measure up, you never have enough, you never are enough, you literally have to become aware that you believe this. So if in life there's always something going wrong or you feel like it's going wrong, that should be your clue. That should be your awareness symbol that you want something else. You desire, your deep desires are something other than what's being supported in your life. So the first step is awareness. And then you have to make a decision about what you want. What is it that you really want in your life? How do you want to create your life? What structure do you want to have? Who do you want to have? How do you want to live how do you want this experience to be? The third thing is to focus on that. Like, really focus on what it is that you want, dream, and desire. Because without that focus, about what's really important for you in your life, you end up sliding back into those old belief systems. And we all know that sliding back is like really detrimental to the self because it takes, because it creates more doubt, it creates more anxiety, it creates more I can't do this kind of perspective. And it reinforces the belief system, the original belief system of not being enough. So, focus is super, super important. And it's probably the one thing that we sort of, I want to say, brush over or don't pay enough attention to um, because it's hard, right? Every single day you have to focus on what it is that you want, dream, and desire. We're definitely not programmed to focused that way. We're generally focused on, what's happening in the world and how can I, teach my kids how to be not like me or like me, or, we get distracted and we get all caught up in the chaos. So being able to focus, again, is not something that we're trained to do in our life, but it's probably one of the most important factors. And then the fourth thing to do is just start creating that in your life. Look for those people who do support what you want and desire versus those people who tear you down.
Yeah, completely agree. You are who you surround yourself with. Sometimes it's hard, but when you remove yourself from toxic situations and toxic people, your life automatically begins to change because you're saying, I'm not settling for that. I want more.
Exactly. That's a huge trust factor when you can do that in your own life. You build that internal trust which also helps you transition from the things that you don't want in your life to the things that you do want. Because if you can't trust yourself, that's an outward, you are always outwardly projecting that. And people can feel it.
Yeah.
And when you build that trust, you build the confidence that you've been looking for.
Yes.
When you're confident, you can conquer the world, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you have to, like, confidence has to become a belief. We have these belief systems that say, I'm not enough, I can't have enough, I'll never be, I'll never have the abundances of the world. But if you don't have confidence and trust in yourself, those are the two key underlying factors, I want to say, that literally is the transformation. Like, those are the codes to the transformation that you're seeking, that you're looking for: trust and confidence. Those two things alone can switch your thoughts, can switch your emotions, can instantly change those belief systems into what you really want. But again, confidence and trust are not things that we are trained to have or to have within ourselves, because we have a tendency to trust things outside of ourselves versus our own self. So those again are two things that you have to focus on, make decisions about, and then create in your life.
I completely understand that. I definitely came a couple of years ago from where I was then to who I am now is mind blowing. And 90% of that is having the self confidence within myself and completely loving and trusting myself. And without having that, your whole life is complete chaos.
Yes. So talk more about that. Like, what was the initial thing that sort of allowed you to open to the awareness that you weren't creating your life the way that you wanted it?
It was about 5 years ago, actually, that I had so much going on in my life that was hard for me. There was in a 3 month period, I felt like I had lost so much. And in this time frame, my dad had passed away very suddenly. And it was just kind of like the icing on the cake. And I was just like, you go through this phase, like, who am I? Like, seriously, like, who am I? Who am I without, a parent here to support you? Or who am I when you're not in a relationship no more? Like, I just, all of it happened so fast and in such a short amount of time that I just completely did not understand who I was anymore. When we get so accustomed to like the way we live, we limit ourselves to, I'll just accept this, that this is my life right now. And after all of that happened, I don't want to say I went through a depression phase, but I think we all kind of go through the ups and the downs. And I one day just was like, this is not it for me. Like, I am meant for so much more. And I made a decision that I was never going to feel sorry for myself, and that I loved who I was, and I needed to figure out how to move forward with gaining my self-confidence back in who I was, and figuring out who I was solely as a person without having outside influences telling me, oh, you should be this person, or oh, you should be that person. Like, who am I? Just me, myself, like me, my soul person. Like, who am I? And that's kind of when the game changed. I used I use a lot of essential oils, and that was the start of the transformation. I went through a all of my oils, and I looked in the beginning of my oil book, and I was like, okay, there's an emotional release in here. What do I got? And I pulled every oil I had that matched something in the book. I knew I didn't have all of them, but I just went with what I had. And I just started rubbing all these oils where it told me to rub them, the ones I had. If I didn't have that one, I tried to substitute it with something else. And I just went through this process, and I did this every day for weeks. And all of a sudden it hit me one day, and I was like, wow, I am not even the same person no more. Like, it took me a lot to get upset. I felt like I cried a lot, like so much before, like everything got to me. Like, if one thing like happened, it would just like crushed my whole day. Or, if you had something happen at school with one of your kids, it's just like, oh, not again. You know what I mean? Instead of looking at it like that, I'm like, okay, like, I'm just, I'm not, I'm not unhappy no more. I just figured out how to seriously love myself just by going through the process of releasing all of the stuff I had just built up over time for years and years and years, because I never ever spoke how I actually felt. And after I started doing those emotional releases, it just all slowly kind of came together, and I have never looked back. And people that haven't seen me for years, I ran into an old friend a couple months ago, and he was like, I follow you on Facebook, and it blows my mind, the person you are now to who you used to be. Because I was very sickly prior to this 5 years. Like, I had migraines so bad, but I was so emotionally stressed out that I did this to myself, and I literally like made myself sick with migraines because I couldn't even deal with life. So I guess that's a little bit of my story, my journey with it, but it's what changed me. And the game changer was when I went from completely having no confidence whatsoever to totally 100% loving and trusting myself.
And it was your emotions that sort of sparked the awareness?
Absolutely, because that's what I hid. I never, you know, I was always one of those people that just bottled everything up. I never really like said how I feel. So I think I just constantly like swallowed my emotions
Mhm.
and never talked about them, never dealt with them. And once I finally dealt with them, it's like this whole new person stepped out of this body that was standing here, and off walked a whole new girl.
Well, I think that that's pretty common for people is it's the emotions that will spark a trigger within us or a quest, I want to say, within us that say, "Hey, something's got to change here. I just can't do this any longer." And then that starts the questioning, right? Like that starts the ball rolling and we start to question our life and we start just as you did, right? Like you started questioning everything. And then you sought a tool. Like, okay, what in my life is going to help me to deal with these emotions because I need something to process through them because I don't know how or maybe I haven't been trained. So what in my life and you went to the oils which is your it's your gift um and that sort of started the process of working through them.
Yes, it definitely didn't happen overnight. I mean, I don't want anybody to think this kind of thing
Right.
happens overnight, but you create awareness about one thing that you're doing, and you're like, oh, I'm not doing that again. Well, by the time the year's over, you've created 365 things that you're aware of now that you used to not be aware of. And it just blows your mind.
Exactly. Once
Every
that ball starts to roll, like it wants to consume everything that's blocking you, everything that's standing in your way. And yeah, it's not easy. I'm not going to lie either. It's not easy to deal with the emotions, but it's also not easy to stuff them and to be like angry and resentful in your life.
No, absolutely not. If that is one thing I would do over, is I didn't know how to deal with my emotions then, and now I do. And if I ever had a do over, that is the one thing that I would never do again, is just swallow them and pretend like they were just going to go away and keep going on about your day like nothing happened. Because in the long run, it takes you twice as long to deal with it later than it does at the time that it actually happened.
Yeah, I think that's where I've always been as well is I have more fear and more angst about how am I going to deal with my emotions versus actually diving in and dealing with the emotions and really working through the whole, well, this is a perception from childhood, or this is, I no longer want this in my life. So I'm going to totally break from that or release that concept, that idea. And this is really what I want. Right. So we have so much fear about the initial process,
Do you
and
think
I think
some
that
of it
that's what stops a good portion of people from like transitioning themselves, changing themselves.
Do you think some of it too is the fact that, when you had that emotion, it was kind of hard, so you never want to deal with it again? You don't want to feel that pain, but just dealing with the emotion doesn't always bring up the bad parts of it. It actually makes you feel so free after you have dealt with it. And I think that's what holds some people back too, is because you're like, oh, I just never want to feel like that again.
Well, what's the point that we don't want to feel again is the experience, the actual experience. So, our memory of that experience is what keeps us from moving through the emotions. It's not necessarily the emotions itself, it's the experience, the whole he said, she said kind of experience, the actual reality of the experience, that is the painful part. Working through the emotions, yeah, it's painful, but if you unattach the memory of the experience from the emotions that you're experiencing now, like you're dealing with two separate things because
Yeah.
we don't have to have the recall of the memory of the experience as we work through the emotions. But because we don't have a good understanding of our own emotions, that creates this barrier to like diving into the emotions.
Yeah. When I when I used to think about it, that's exactly what I thought, that if I dealt with the emotions, I was going to have to relive the experience, but that is not the case at all.
Exactly. That's a lie. And, you know, but we've been taught to do that. You have to remember the experience so that you don't have it again. Well, that's not really, I mean, you can have that same exact experience, but it totally depends upon your response, your belief systems, and your perception of what's actually happening. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's confusing the way that we're taught because it doesn't really match our internal um, knowing, our internal knowing of who we are.
Yeah. So somebody wanted to take the steps going forward. And they're completely ready to say, "Hey, I need to deal with this emotion. I have held on to this for way too long." What would be a really good step going forward that could slowly help them let go of the emotions without remembering the memory?
Well, there's a great NLP process where you literally unattach yourself and you move the experience as far away from you as you possibly can. Um, so you can do that process, and then you can just deal with the emotions that you're experiencing in this moment. Like, we don't want to go back in time to experience the event. We want to experience the emotions right now, and we want to like make sense of them and then move through them. Once you once you have that kind of an awareness or that kind of decision that you make that you want to move through them, it goes pretty quickly. So let's say you have, grief is a good one for this. So let's say you're experiencing grief from loss of a loved one, and like you don't want to deal with your emotions because you miss this person so much. So what you do is you remember the person and then you push that person as far away from you as possible, like energetically push them away. And then you bring that person back. So you're like creating a visual in your mind of this person who's right next to you. And then you're pushing them away and then you're pulling them back and you're pushing them away again. And you do that probably 10 times with the intention that your emotions are not captivated or they don't belong to the visual that you have of your loved one. Then you will feel lighter. You will feel like you have some space between you and that person. Then what you want to start to do is start asking yourself some questions. This is where the decision portion comes in your transformation. So you have to make some decisions about how you're going to feel without them being in your life. Then you need to focus on those decisions. Once you make a decision about something, it's pretty easy. But we have a tendency to sort of remember the event or remember that person, and then we fall backwards. So you have to constantly, for at least a month, I'm going to say 2 months probably. For me, it's usually 2 months. I really need to focus my energy and stay with the decisions that I've made. Then life starts to create. So I can miss that person, but I don't have to emotionally disengage from the rest of my life. I can, think about them, I can remember them, but I don't have to remember the moment that I found out that they had passed. That whole trauma, that whole like shocking kind of experience that you have when someone passes. It's like a shock, and it's like, and if you don't have really good um, belief systems around what death is, you need to start there as well. Like you can start to move into, okay, well, I believe that that they've gone to heaven, or, whatever your belief systems are. Or for me, it's, well, I believe that they're right here with me, and all I have to do is connect with them if I want to talk to them or if I want to ask them something. So you have to really decide what it is you believe about death. Then you can move
Yeah,
forward. Then you can go ahead.
that definitely changes it. When when I was younger, you do, we're taught that death is so hurtful. It's so hard, but it doesn't have to be, because I absolutely used to view that in the same way. But you're right. Like, I changed my belief systems on how I look at that now. And if I want to have a conversation with my dad, I literally sit down and have a conversation with him. And I know he's with me at all times. And I never doubt that. And you can feel them around you, they're around you. And so I never look at death as absolute heartbreaking things anymore, because what we live here on earth is so, like, that this is actually the hard part, where they're at is total bliss. So I definitely look at it in a different way now too, and not as a hurtful time.
Right. Yeah. We have a lot of fear. So, how do we transform ourselves? Well, first step is to be aware that we want to transform. If you have internal struggle, that's probably going to be a sign that you have some sort of belief system that does not match your current lifestyle. So, that's an awareness cue. The second thing is to make a decision. Who do you want to be? How do you want to be? How do you want your life to be created here? You are ultimately the creator of everything, and you're the one that makes the decisions. But you have to really make the decisions. Once you make the decision, the third thing is to focus on that decision. Let it be how you support yourself moving forward. And then you gather, right, like all the people and all the things in your life to, again, help support those decisions. And then the fourth thing is allow the creation to happen. You're the creator. So the creation already starts happening the moment you become aware.
It's all about awareness.
It is. Totally. All right, Amber, thank you so much for joining in again today. And to all of our followers out there, thank you.
Yes.